Hello everyone, and thank you for joining us to celebrate this year's Stephen Spender Prize. I'm Charlotte and I'm director of the Stephen Spender Trust. I'm sitting at home right now on my own, but I am in a Zoom room with, and I think we just heard somebody in the room. I'm in a Zoom room with the winners, about 33 winners and commendees of this year's prize, also all of our judges and trustees and some of my Stephen Spender Trust colleagues. So I'm in extremely good company tonight, and I think we've got a really lovely hour ahead of us. I think it's an understatement to say that this has not been the year we expected, but one of the things that it's caused us to discover at the Stephen Spender Trust is how well the Stephen Spender Prize is suited to virtual activities and to this strange virtual world that we found ourselves living in this year. One of our kind of mantras at the Trust is the idea that anyone can be a translator. Anyone can translate a poem. All you need is the poem, a dictionary perhaps, and perhaps also a little inspiration and guidance. And I'm going to talk a bit later about how we used various virtual means to make sure that everybody in the country had access to those things and were able to engage with the prize. And it seems like that worked because we had a record number of entries this year. And it's really pleasing to see the trajectory of what's happened with the prize over the past couple of years. If we look back, compared to 2018, we had the numbers of entries have gone up in the youth category from 300 to 500 last year to 1,000 this year. And across the whole prize, the number of languages represented has gone from 46 to 65 to 80. So there really is a lot to celebrate this evening, and I'm so glad that you could all join us to celebrate with our winners. I want to thank everybody who's made that possible, starting with our funders, the Rothschild Foundation, the Polonsky Foundation, Old Possum's Practical Trust, the Sackler Trust, and Redcase Limited. I'm particularly grateful for all the support I get from the Stephen Spender trustees and from our small and perfectly formed team at the Stephen Spender Trust, in particular my colleagues Jamie, who has coordinated the prize this year, and Stacey, who works on our education projects and has also put together this event that you're enjoying this evening. We've learned lots about the virtual world this year, and on Monday I decided to try out one of the new tools that I've learned that Stacey in fact taught me about, in order to gather impressions from our 33 winners and translators, winners and commended translators about their impressions of the prize and what it meant to them. So all they had to do was to type in some words into a web page, and then out popped a word cloud that represented their impressions of the prize. And if you joined before 6 o'clock, you might have seen that on the screen. The most frequent word that came out in that word cloud was eye-opening. And I was so pleased with that. That was a really great start to my week to see that, because to me, that really goes to the heart of what we're trying to do at the Trust and what the Stephen Spender Prize is all about. I think we've got an eye-opening evening ahead of us, so I'm not going to delay it any further. It's time to meet one of our judges. It's been a great pleasure to work with 4 judges this year. I've been working again with Mary Jean Chan and Antonia Lloyd Jones, and for the first time with Khairani Barokka and Daljit Nagra. And I'd like to invite Khairani Barokka to join us now. And we'll be introducing the 14 and under category. Hello, Oka, how are you doing?
Hi, Charlotte, how are you? It's very exciting to be here.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us. Oka is an Indonesian writer, translator, and artist based in the UK. Her debut poetry collection, Rope, is published by Nine Arches Press, and the press have kindly donated copies, which Oka has signed, and they'll be going out to some of our winners in the coming weeks. Before we get to hear about the 14 and under category, Oka, could you tell us a little bit about your work as a translator?
Yeah, sure. So I'm bilingual in Indonesian and English. I have very minimal Russian knowledge. And I see translation as very much connected to various social justice concerns and interdisciplinary arts and disability justice. I just really love seeing how translation, especially in schools, is opening up lots of new possibilities for kids to imbibe art from other cultures and from their own cultures that perhaps they didn't have access to before.
That's great to hear. And in fact, we met on a panel where we were both talking about widening access to translation, didn't we? And that's where the work that the Stephen Spender Trust with schools, that's where I talked about that to you for the first time. Yeah. You're currently artist in residence at the National Centre for Writing, I think. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I'm associate artist alongside Jay Bernard, who is the other associate artist, until the middle of next year. And I'm developing a few different book projects. The next one is called Ultimatum Orangutan in English, or Ultimatum Orangutan in Indonesian. It's the same title in both languages, but they mean different things. That's what's coming up next.
Great. Thank you. So this is your first time judging the Stephen Spender Prize. Could you just say a little bit about the experience of the prize, and then if you could introduce our 14 and under winners and commendees?
Yeah, it was overwhelming to experience just like the breadth and depth of entries, so many more in volume than last year. And it's really a testament to, I just want to thank everyone who submitted, all the teachers who were supportive, all the parents and families who I'm sure were supportive in making all of the entries happen. And it was a real treat. And I loved being able to work with Mary Jean Chan and with Daljit Nagra and with yourself on just debating about art, reading art, talking about translation. It was great.
Great. And could you say a little bit about the 14 and under category?
Yes, I'm very delighted to introduce this category. So apart from the 3 commended poems by Vishal Saha, Maddie Stoll, and Omar Ula for respectively Mario Benedetti's When We Were Kids from Uruguay in Spanish, Ai Ching's Hope in Chinese, and Kamini Roy's Lest They Say Something in Bangla, which all contain, deceptively simple language, but they had quite profound verse within them. In the 14 and under category, third prize goes to Caroline Olivia Edwards' translation of Cuban poet Jose Marti's Versos Sencillos, Verso 3, if I'm not mistaken. And it was really, it was quite undertaking. It's quite a long poem, and I think she did such a wonderful job with it. And second place is Grace Wu's translation of Li Bai's Muse of the Moon from Chinese. And Grace wrote in her notes that she wanted to convey this mystical and ethereal atmosphere. And I think she managed to do that wonderfully with really a really innate understanding of spacing and pacing and form, which I found delightful. And then first prize, we all agreed, was Hannah KRIPA Jordan's boisterous and charming translation, And Yet Our Tamil Live, from Manusha Putran's Tamil. And I'm very delighted to be able to hear that next.
Great, thank you, Oka. So we wanted to involve as many of our winners and commendees this evening as possible. And so they've all produced videos, which we've put together for you this evening. And so I'm very pleased to introduce our first video, which is the winning and commended translators for the 14 and under category.
Hi, my name's Vish and I translated a poem from Spanish.
My name is Grace and I translated a poem from Mandarin.
My name is Khairani Olivia and I translated a poem from Spanish.
Hello, my name is Maddie and I translated a poem from Mandarin.
I chose to translate this poem because it presented a challenge due to its length, and I thought that it would be a good idea to challenge myself. The most challenging part of the translation was that once I had translated a line, sometimes I needed to go back to it and change the word order so that it read correctly.
I really like this poem because I think hope was a very significant part of the poet Ai Ching's life, who was imprisoned for many years for standing up for what he believed in. Hope is always important, especially right now, given the uncertainty and challenges we face as a global community.
I chose to translate this poem because it's simple yet powerful, and it shows how death is perceived as we get older. A large challenge when translating this poem was finding a realistic rhyming scheme while still keeping the meaning of the poem.
I chose to translate this poem because I enjoyed how it conveyed both the poet's emotion and the landscape around him in only 4 short lines, which is a quality I have tried to preserve in my own translation.
My name is Hannah Jordan and I translated a poem from Tamil. I like the poem Our Tamil Life when I first read it because it is true to my experience of India during my holidays there, which I enjoy a great deal. The poem is titled And Yet Our Tamil Life and is written by Manushya Puttaran. These doorbells, does it matter they don't ring? And yet, none of my visitors have left without today's gossip. The bathroom has a broken latch. So what? A year and a half has gone by, and yet, no one's privacy has been invaded, nor daydreams interrupted. The chair may have a broken leg, its balance a little rocked, and yet, to the startled guest, not a hint of disrespect. For more than a week now, I've driven my car with failing brakes, and yet, in this city where God keeps watch, I managed to return home in one full piece. I suffer a pain in my belly, but what can I do? Nowadays it returns more frequently, and yet, if I recline at a certain angle, I can just about bear the pain. There may be endless predicaments in most parts of our Tamil life, and yet, Tamil life is plain sailing, a thread without knots.
Thank you very much to all the winners and commendees for those really lively, wonderful readings. I think that's a great start because it really reflects the different kinds of entries that we get to the prize. We get young people who are translating from languages that they're learning at school, and that gives them a creative experience that they might not otherwise get. And then, of course, our winner there was translating from a language that she knows because of her family and through travel and so on, which is also a really important aspect of our work. So, Ulka, back to you. We're now going to move on to the 16 and under category, which was actually a new category that we invented this year to enable us to award more prizes. Could you tell us a bit about this category and the winners and commended translators?
Yes, I think we did really well with this new invented category as well. The two commended poems, they're actually both passionate odes on politics and war, but very different. The first being Gabriella O'Keeffe's translation of an extract from Michael David's Tears for America from the Irish, and Matilda Stepek translated Ovid's Passions of a Ghostly Fury. So you're talking about American politics and you're talking about very ancient, Ovidian politics. So it's quite a contrast and really, really lovely to see. For the 16 and under category, Alice Garcia Calmas takes third for Mario Quintana's I Write Against an Open Window from the Brazilian Portuguese. Just really lovely turns of phrase, including one I particularly liked, thought of light fingers painting me. And similarly, in second place, Alessandro de Tanasio won for...
We've lost your sound, Ulka. Not quite. No. I think it's gone very quiet.
Okay.
Oh, there you go. You're back. You're back.
Okay, great. Apologies.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what happened there. All right. Okay, we're back. So, and similarly, writing about the delights of daytime, in the words of Giacomo Leopardi's Saturday in the Village, A Day Full of Joy, was translated by Alessandro de Tanasio from the Italian, very sensitively. And then in first place, we have Megan Turtle's A Strong Translation from Russian of Joseph Brodsky's Do Not Leave Your Room, in which outside nothing makes sense, happiness included. And I think we all felt a sense of resonance with, this injunction to not leave our rooms as we currently are facing. So I'd just like to thank all the poets involved. You all did wonderful jobs.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ulka. And you'll see what Ulka means when we get to the winning poem in this video that's coming up. This is our 16 and under category commandees and winners.
Hi, I'm Matilda and I translated from Latin.
My name is Alice and I translated a poem from Portuguese.
My name is Alessandro Lasdasu and I translated a poem from Italian.
I really like this poem because it uses vivid, colourful imagery and it plays with narrative in an interesting way.
For me, this poem represents the joy of anticipation in a simple life.
I chose to translate the extract Passions of a Ghostly Fury from Ovid's Ibis because I think that ancient literature provides an insight into cultures that would otherwise be lost. However, the distance of time between us and them, and the fact that Latin is a dead language, cause more challenges in preserving the poet's intentions.
Hi, my name's Megan and I chose to translate a poem from Russian. I chose this poem because I thought that when removed from its original Soviet context and read alongside current UK government guidance to stay at home amidst an ongoing pandemic, it is particularly relevant to today. Do Not Leave Your Room by Joseph Brodsky. Do not leave your room, do not make a mistake. What use is the sun if your smoke chain must break? Outside nothing makes sense, happiness included. Go quickly to the restroom, but remain elusive. Do not leave your room. Do not leave your room, do not call a taxi. Space is nothing but a hallway floor, waxy, that ends with a meter counting. If your lover knocks, undresses, caresses, expel her. Do not leave your room. Do not leave your room, feign illness, face white. What's more interesting than the lamp's soft light? Why leave your room when you will come back later? The same, unchanged, if not more mutilated. Do not leave your room. Do not leave your room. Instead dance the bossa nova, naked except for shoes with your coat thrown over. The smell of cabbage lingers in the hallway heavy. You wrote countless letters, one more, too many. Do not leave your room. Do not leave your room. Let these four walls become your only friend, your mirror. Incognito ergo sum, as substance once informed form, in the chaos of nightmare. Stay at home, sleep, dance, write. It's not France out there. Do not leave your room. Do not be a fool, be what others couldn't be. Stay home, for furniture will keep you company. Practice wallpaper fusion. Barricade the door to protect us from Kronos, Cosmos, Eros, the virus.
Thank you so much to all the winners and commended translators in the 16 and under category. That was another wonderful selection, really, really impressive work. I'm pleased now to introduce our next judge, Daljit Nagra. Would you like to join us, Daljit? Hello. Hi, Daljit. How are you doing? Welcome. Oh, can I just check the sound? Can you just say something again, Daljit?
Hello.
There we go. That's better. Daljit is an award-winning poet with several volumes published by Faber and Faber. And Faber have also sent some copies for some of our winners, which will be going out in the coming weeks. So thank you very much for that. Daljit's also a broadcaster, and many of you will know his voice from Poetry Extra on the BBC. In a minute, we're going to hear from one of the poets who was translated for the prize. And Daljit, your own poetry has been translated into other languages. I was wondering if you could say a little bit about what it's like to be translated.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's interesting when people criticise your work or praise it or read it. They're sort of seeing it from the outside slightly. But when I've worked with translators, for example, Russian poet, Dutch, you're reimagining your own work again. It's a very peculiar experience. You're trying to recontextualise, why did I say these things? And when I worked with the translators, I often asked, well, what mood were you in, or what period did you write it in? What was going on in the background? And actually, you have to start thinking about social, political things that were happening at the time that might have impacted on the writing of the poem. So it's a real kind of going back in time, which is a really fascinating experience to see what structured the piece in the first place.
That is fascinating, and I think that speaks to what our the poet, whose video we're going to watch shortly, says as well. I think there's sometimes something about kind of reading your own poem again anew and seeing new things in it when it's read and translated by other people, and that's one of the real joys of translation. So we will come back to you after this video, Daljit, but first I just wanted to share this video with you that came to us from the Mexican poet Pedro Serrano, who was translated by Olivia Flint in the 16 and under category. So you saw Olivia in the previous video. And Pedro wrote to us when we sent him her translation and said how delighted he was, and said some really interesting things about the experience of being translated. And so we asked him to make this video, and that's what we're going to share with you now.
Soy Pedro Serrano. Nací en Montreal y vivo en la Ciudad de México. Soy poeta, ensayista y traductor. Quiero dar las gracias por esta traducción de mi poema Escolares en Vía Augusta. Me siento sorprendido y encantado. Quien hizo la traducción ha hecho un muy buen trabajo. Me gustaron las decisiones que tomó. Si puede ser de alguna ayuda, en mi imaginario la palabra encrespados no se refiere al pelo, sino al mar. Aunque ahora que lo pienso, la espuma es el pelo encrespado de Neptuno, ¿no? Me sorprende la acertada observación de la presencia del pelo a lo largo del poema. Es verdad, y yo no me había dado cuenta. Supongo, ahora que lo pienso, que puede estar relacionado con lo largo que yo traía el pelo a esa edad. En ese sentido, también aprecio enormemente que alguien de menos de 18 años escogiera precisamente este poema, que habla justo de esa edad, cuando todavía no somos adultos, pero tampoco somos ya niños, y estamos dudando todo el tiempo, como Telémaco en la Odisea, aunque por otro lado, siempre somos así. El poema se titula Escolares en Vía Augusta porque lo escribí viendo un grupo de adolescentes saliendo de la escuela y cruzando esa avenida de Barcelona. La única diferencia, y es algo que me da mucha pena, es que toda la gente de esa edad no puede ahora salir en grupo de la escuela y dudar si cruzar la calle o no. Espero que este poema les haga sentir que vuelan. Muchas gracias.
Welcome back, everybody, and thank you. I'm hoping Pedro Serrano is out there watching. Thank you so much, Pedro, for that video. It's also great to hear another language. Daljit, this is your first year judging the prize. It's been a great pleasure to work with you. You've judged lots of other poetry prizes before. What was it a different experience judging a poetry translation prize?
Yeah, massively different in some ways, because when you judge sort of open poetry competitions, you get some, poems by very, very new poets, or poets who haven't read anything from the last 30 years. Sometimes poets centre things and put pictures in. But with this, we had classic poems. So I was discovering new poets I'd never heard of, and I was looking up online, ordering books on certain poets. So it was probably the most rewarding experience I've had as a judge of a poetry competition, because it felt like education and pleasure simultaneously. That doesn't always happen, does it?
That's music to my ears, thank you. So we've come to the 18 and under category, which is our oldest age category for the youth part of the prize. Daljit, could you just say a little bit about our winners and commended poets?
Yeah. So, because we're going to see the video anyway, we'll see the winners. But what really interested me, and also about the younger poets there, with the under 18, is they're selecting really mature pieces of work. For example, our winner is Lemons by MONTALE. It's about lemons, but it's about so much more. And it takes such a complex understanding, not just of the words or of the story, but of a kind of maturity that's in the poem. There's so much wisdom there. It speaks about time and age and all sorts of things, and disappointment. That when you're translating, you can't just sort of do, colour by numbers. You have to have this other ghostly feeling for the poem. So you have to get certain words that aren't literal in the poem, that feel that they speak to the ghost of the poem that's there, that speak of the kind of wider sphere of the poem. And I felt all the kind of winners we had, actually there were quite a few in the under 18 category who could have done well or won. So sorry for those who completely missed out, but maybe another hour of discussion you might have got higher. So that was really the standard, wasn't it, Charlotte, as you remember?
Absolutely.
From judging, really high standard. And it's just the rightness of language, the kind of taking in the breath of the whole poem and understanding, absorbing it, and then replaying it for us. So I thought they were really wise, mature selections on the part of our winners, as we'll hear now, and we'll hear the winning poem.
Great. Yeah, thank you, Daljit. So we'll now watch the video prepared by our under 18 and under winners and commendees. Thanks.
My name is Olivia and I've translated a poem from Spanish.
My name is Vasil Gilbert and I translated a poem from Japanese.
My name is Isabel Birkland and I translated a poem from Chinese.
My name is Cosima Dietman and I have translated a poem from German.
I became interested in this poem after hearing about the tragic life of the poet. She was a revolutionary against the Qing dynasty and wrote many feminist works before she was executed at the age of 31.
I like these haiku because they are very atmospheric, and it's amazing how much feeling can be expressed by so few words.
I wanted to translate something contemporary and really liked this poem's slightly weird and techie terminology, as well as its interesting form, which was list-like and without punctuation.
The most challenging part of the translation process was overcoming dilemmas about word choice, in which I had to decide whether it was more important to stick closely to the original meaning of a phrase or ensure that the fluidity of the poem was maintained and it still sounded natural.
My name is MARYAM and I translated a poem from Italian. I chose to translate this poem because it focuses on quotidian life and the roots of Montale's personal experiences, displaying that even through the monotony of winter, contentment awaits him in the form of the lemon trees. I limoni by Eugenio Montale. Listen to me. Laureate poets only seem to move among plants with rarely used names, boxwood, privet, or acanthus. As for me, I love streets that lead to grassy ditches, where in partly dried up puddles young boys grab at some scrawny eels. The narrow streets that follow these banks descend onto tufted reeds, and unfold onto the orchards among the lemon trees. Perhaps it is better if the chorus of the birds dwindles, swallowed up by the azure sky. You can hear the whispers of the friendly branches more clearly now in that almost immovable air, and the essences of this fragrance that cannot separate itself from the earth pours into our chest with a restless sweetness. Here, by some miracle, the war of adverse passions is stilled. Here even the poorest of us can reach our share of wealth, the fragrance of the lemons. Look, in these silences when things yield themselves and seem close to revealing their ultimate secret, sometimes we expect to unearth an error in nature, the world's dead point, the link that comes loose, the thread that, untangled, might finally lead us to the heart of a truth. Our gaze searches all around, the mind probes, assents, disconnects in the fragrance that sweeps over us when the day grows faint. These are the silences where one sees in every fading human shadow some disturbed divinity. But the illusion is lost, and time returns us to noisy cities, where the azure sky only shows itself in fragments, high up, between the cornices. The rain then wearies the earth, the tedium of winter thickens over the roofs, daylight becomes miserly, the soul bitter. Yet, one day, through a gate left ajar among the trees of a courtyard, we catch a glimpse of the yellow lemons, and the frost in our hearts thaws, and into our chest pour their songs, the golden trumpets of sunlight.
Thank you very much to all the winning and commended translators who contributed to that video. I totally agree with that, what Daljit was saying about the real maturity there. It's extremely impressive. We're now moving on to a special strand of the prize, which we call the Spotlight. This is a part of the prize that is just for translations from Polish. It's the 3rd year that we've been running it, and it is sadly the last year that we'll be running it, because next year our spotlight will be Urdu. So I'm very pleased to welcome our Polish Spotlight judge, who is judging for the 3rd year, Antonia Lloyd Jones. Hello, Antonia.
Hello.
Antonia is an award-winning translator from Polish and a great advocate for Polish literature internationally. And it's been an absolute delight to work with you, Antonia, for the past 3 years. You're not allowed to stop being involved with the Trust, even though the Polish Spotlight is coming to an end. Could you say a little bit about what the experience has been like for you over these 3 years of being involved in the Spotlight?
Oh, it's been a wonderful opportunity because we do have a whole new generation of Polish speakers growing up in this country. And for me, as a translator of Polish literature, it's extremely encouraging to see so many budding translators among them and to see them being encouraged, because in the future, these are the people who'll be able to address the underrepresentation of Polish literature in English generally. So grab them while they're young. It's very good. I'm very grateful to the Stephen Spender Trust for that. And we already had a good active network of Polish Saturday schools in this country, all over the United Kingdom. And those have existed, I think, for several decades. But the Stephen Spender Trust has done an amazing job of teaming up with them and also with translators who also have very good teaching skills, and has been able to organise very good workshops in all sorts of different kinds of schools, which have encouraged children to explore translation when they might never have thought of doing that. And then this year, the previous 2 years, we've just let people choose whatever poems they want. And this year, I thought we'd change things a little bit. So with the help of teacher and translator Maja Konkolewska, who's one of the workshop leaders, I curated a selection of contemporary Polish poems for the Spotlight contestants to choose from. And I thought also that could act as a lasting resource that the Saturday schools and any other schools can continue to use in the future. Because sometimes if you're not living in Poland, it's harder to have contact with the poetry that's being produced right now. So I thought we'd introduce people to some of the current poetry. And the poets were only too willing to give their permission for us to use their work for this purpose. They were thrilled to bits. I had a very good response from the poets. And the Stephen Spender Trust has also produced some excellent virtual workshops based on those curated poems, which will carry on existing as a resource. And tonight, we're going to see the superb fruits of all this activity in the work of some remarkable young translators among our winners and commended contestants.
Thank you, Antonia. Yeah, I think the point you make about living poetry, contemporary poetry, is so important, and I'm so glad that we did that this year, that we created that booklet, and that's something that we'll be doing with our future spotlights. We're working with the poet and translator Sasha Aurora Achta on this audio spotlight next year, and I'm sure she'll be talking to you at some point about how it all worked.
Very well.
So it's a great way to make to bring poetry to young people and make it clear that it is such a vital and living thing. Antonia, could you say a few words about our winners and commended poets before we watch their video?
I was highly impressed by the entries that we had this year, and the translators rose very well to the challenge of tackling some very complex poetry, because we tried to choose poems for the selection that went right across all the age groups, and some people who I would have expected to choose poems for much younger people chose very difficult poems, and they showed really profound understanding of that poetry, as well as a great deal of creative talent. And you're about to hear the three winners and one of the commended translators reading their work. And those include, in the 10 and under category, some very amusing renditions of technically tricky poems. Those translations are by Aaron Ferguson and Maximilian Hempel. And one of them is about dog fleas, and you heard me correctly there. And the other one's about sharks. And then in the 14 and unders, we've got a very mature and sensitive translation by Alexander Fletcher of a refined poem about the power of poetry. And in the 18 and under category, there's an extremely skilled and empathetic translation by HANNA KISIALA of one of my all-time favourite Polish poems, Powrót by BRONISław, which is an enchanting and comforting depiction of dying as a journey back to the source of life. So you have to listen out for these things: fleas, a herring, some invisible dust, and a face reflected in a well. Got that? And please do explore the rest of the wonderful commended translations on the website, and all the commended translations. We've been hearing from the translators, but there's obviously not time to hear all the translations, but I would highly recommend taking a look at everything that's there. And I wish you could hear all of them here, it'd be great.
Thank you so much, Antonia. So without further ado, we're going to watch our video, which contains all three of the Polish Spotlight categories. You've got a real treat in store. I hope you all enjoy this.
My name is Michaela Konkolewska-Griba and I translated a poem from Polish.
My name is Aaron Ferguson and I translated a poem from Polish.
Hi, I'm Sky Slatcher and I translated a poem from Polish.
My name is Alex Fletcher and I translated a poem from Polish.
My name is Hanna KISIALA and I translated a poem from Polish.
Hi, my name is Max and I translated a poem from Polish.
This poem reflects on the beauty of paintings and searching for something in art which we lack in our own lives, a sense of peace and tranquility. In these times of isolation and social distancing, one thing I have found really enjoyable is visiting museums and art galleries virtually. So when looking through the poems, this one really appealed to me.
I really like this poem because of its modern, unorthodox style, which is rare to see amongst the poems I usually get to study at school, and because it uses a very good piece of imagery to show the power of poetry and how it can affect someone's emotions.
I like this poem because it had some difficult words in it. I also like the dogs.
I really liked this poem because I liked how it was more of a dialogue and I thought it was quite funny. I chose to translate this poem during quarantine because it reminded me of the times when we were allowed to go out with our friends and family for cake and tea in cafes.
I liked this poem because it had a lot of rhyming words, it was funny, and I like hammerhead sharks. That's a lot of reasons.
I chose to translate this poem because I like the way the poet channels metaphysical concepts into vivacious imagery, which I feel is reflective of the significance of Christian thoughts in Polish literature.
A Sawfish, poem by Łukasz Dębski. There was a sawfish, sharp like a sting, ouch, who chased a fin herring, poor thing. Help, help, the herring had called his friend Mr. Shark, what was very old. He came to the rescue with all his might and his main, and his efforts did not go in vain. So how come that he got the sawfish to lose its shark? The answer was simple. His full name was Mr. Hammerhead Shark.
Zbigniew Machej. From dog to dog, flee bobs. From dog to dog, flee bobs, nip nip nips, nip nip nips. Flee bobs, very high, beyond the Cheops pyramid. Better than grasshopper, and dog runs after dog. Once backwards, once crosswise, once opposite, once against. Running around the park, dogs among the trees, and flee nip nip nips. Bobs, from one ridge to another, like Apache chasing the Mustangs. There's no better way for the flea gangs than to hop from dog to a dog, from tail to tail, from coat to coat. High and far, like in the game, like in the Olympics, FLEA, the athlete. Hellcat ballerina, she just tenses a little and hops far, far away, like from the earth to the moon, even to its dark side. Such dog and flea theatre everyone would like to see. Where is such circus to flee? Wouldn't be bad to see, but we can only spot two dogs that chase each other around the park. Only sometimes either one or another gets up or sits down, looks around or lively scratches its collar line to get rid of flea from spine.
Przeciwne wiatry by Tomasz Rożycki, which I translated as Opposing Winds. When I started writing, I did not know yet that each of my words would be taking away a piece of the world, leaving behind only empty places. That slowly verses would replace my homeland, my mother, my father, my first love and my second youth. And what I had written would be taken away from the world, would abandon its solid state, evaporate, become air, wind, rain and fire. And that which I animated in verse would become still in life and would crumble into particles so minuscule that it would become almost antimatter, a cloud of invisible dust, spiraling in the air until in the end, it falls in your eye and makes it tear up.
Homecoming by BRONISŁAW. In that single moment, as fleeting as that of birth, the old woman, her body devastated by disease, suddenly, gently pushes away the medicine, the white bandages, our hands, our tears, death and life. She runs out into the sun, a youthful girl, golden-haired and graceful as a dancing flame in a hot, sleepy afternoon in June. She walks through the square of the little town, impatient, thirsty, to the well in the fickle shade of the acacia. Bending over, she sees in the water's mirror an image of the world, innocent and pure and, delighted, her face in a crown of braids, in a crown of light, crown of the world, gold and white as the clouds. Happily humbled, she gently stirs the picture. She drinks the living water and runs off, eager. It's time to go home, by the quiet Coon Street, with its intoxicating rows of roses and mallow over its fences. Every second she is younger. Under the red rowan-berry lanterns, she is going home. The home of sisters, brothers, cats, dolls, beaux. She is younger and younger. A little girl, she struggles to open the beaten gate. She runs impatient, eager, through the warm grass. She is going to her home, her father's house. And, even younger, so little, barely revealed to the innocent world, still unchanging, still barely understanding a word, she understands everything. Eagerly, so eagerly, she will hear, Talitha cum. She is home.
Thank you very much to all the winning and commended translators in the Polish Spotlight. That was a really extraordinary montage with such a great variety of poetry, which is down to you, Antonia. Thank you for putting that together and for inspiring these young translators. We hope this is the beginning of their translation journey for many of them.
Can I just say, as it's the last year of the Polish Spotlight, I want to say an enormous thank you to you, Charlotte, for everything you've done, and everyone at the Stephen Spender Trust. You've all done the most amazing and valuable work to spark the potential of young translators from Polish. So thank you.
Thank you, Antonia. That's really great to hear, and it's just an enormous pleasure to do this work. We're going to move swiftly on now to the second part of this Polish Spotlight section, where we're going to hear from Michaela Konkolewska-Grybę, who you saw in that video. Michaela was the winner in the 14 and under Polish Spotlight last year and commended this year. And because the aim of the prize, or one of the aims of the Spotlight, is to inspire and to give opportunities to young Polish speakers in the UK, we thought it would be really nice to hear from some young Polish speakers in the UK. So we're now going to watch Michaela being interviewed by her brother Maddox about what it's like to grow up, not just bilingual, but trilingual in the UK.
I'm Maddox Konkolewski-Grybę, and today I'll be interviewing my sister Michaela Konkolewska-Grybę. So Mickey, how much languages do you speak?
I speak Polish and Lithuanian, fluent in Polish and not so fluent in Lithuanian, and I learn Spanish at school.
How do these languages affect you in your everyday life?
My parents taught to me in Polish and Lithuanian, and I learned Spanish at school. When I was at my school, I was part of the Young Interpreters, which helped new students tour around the school and talk to them in their language so that they can understand everything that the teacher is saying to them.
How do you use these languages in your poetry?
So in my Polish poem, it was quite easy to start off with until I found some words that were more difficult. So I had to use translation websites to find out what different words meant. Then I used thesaurus to find better words for it.
Why do you think having Polish literature in the Stephen Spender Trust is really good for poetry?
Well, I think that having the Polish language encourages young people to speak another language as well, like Polish and other languages. And I think that there's quite a lot of Polish-speaking people in the UK.
What would you say to other future people trying to do a Polish Spotlight?
Well, I think that it's a really fun experience and I should totally try it out. You might not win, but it's still really fun.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Michaela and Maddox. I'm really looking forward to watching your broadcasting careers blossom in the years ahead. So normally this event would be taking place in a venue just off Trafalgar Square in central London. And while it's in some ways disappointing that we're not all there tonight, there is something about the fact that this has become a virtual event that really reflects what we're trying to do with the Stephen Spender Prize, which is all about making it more inclusive. And we've got people watching from all over the world tonight. All of the translators are able to be present, which isn't always the case when we're in central London. I just wanted to stiefly say a couple of things about what we're doing in terms of making the prize more open and accessible. So we, as Antonia and Ilka mentioned, we've been developing virtual resources for teachers to use. And we were lucky enough to get an Arts Council grant this summer to develop more resources that teachers and young people could use while schools were closed. One example of that is that we developed booklets of poetry in 14 languages, from Bengali to Spanish and everything in between. And it was great to work with so many poets and translators on those projects. There's been an immense amount of generosity shown towards us over the past few months as we've developed our programs. All of these resources are developed in our YouTube channel, so you're in the right place. Do check back later to have a look at what else is available on our YouTube channel. But of course, the most important way of reaching young people is the teachers that bring poetry translation into their classrooms. And we decided this year that we wanted to really find a way to celebrate the teachers who were doing that, especially under the extremely difficult circumstances that they've been working in this year. So we've selected 3 teachers who we're calling our outstanding teachers. If anybody has a better name, then let us know for next year. And I just wanted to name them and share them with you. First of all, we have Nadia Siddiqui from the Westgate School in Slough, Sabina Pishu and her colleagues at Swavesey Village College in Cambridgeshire, and Kilda Giraudon and colleagues at Collerton Grammar School in Devon. They all entered enormous numbers of pupils to the prize and showed real commitment to what we're doing, and we're really grateful to you. This year, for the first time, we put on a workshop for all the youth winners and commendees. Our new patron, Kate Clancy, ran that workshop on multilingual poetry a couple of weeks ago. Thank you very much, Kate, for that. And the teachers I've just mentioned were all able to nominate one pupil to take part in that. So that was a really nice way of sort of developing a partnership, and we'll also be sending some books and goodies from the Trust to those 3 teachers. Last but not least, this year we wanted to encourage more adults to enter the prize, especially those who've never entered before, perhaps those who've never translated a poem before. We wanted to make it clear that you don't have to be an old hand, you don't have to be an expert on poetry, and that to have the pleasure of translating poetry and maybe even win the competition. So together with Jamie, my colleague, we put together a guide for first-time translators, and we introduced this new category for first-time entrants. And so I wanted to mention tonight Fiona Garrett, Lorna Amor and Mark Granger, who we all commended as first-time entrants for their translations of poem from French, Taiwanese Mandarin and German. So it seemed to work pretty well, encouraging first-time entrants. We had more first-time entrants than ever before. We had more entrants than ever before to the adult categories of the Stephen Spender Prize. And so this is a very good moment to invite Mary Jean Chan to join us to introduce the winners and commendees in the open category. Hi, Mary Jean.
Hi, Charlotte.
How are you doing?
Good, thank you.
So Mary Jean is an award-winning poet from Hong Kong, now based in London. Her collection Flesh is published by Faber and Faber, and Faber have also sent us some copies to send out to winners. Thank you very much, Faber. Mary Jean, this is your second year judging the prize. Could you let us know how you would compare the 2 years and what the experience has been like for you?
Yeah, it's been a wonderful experience. I would say, working with 2 different sets of judges, it's been an equally pleasurable experience. Obviously, I remember last year's deliberations took place in the Senate House in London, and obviously now this time we had to do our deliberations online, but I think it was equally pleasurable hearing everyone's shortlists and kind of arguing and, sort of rooting for the poets we believed in, the translations we believed in. And in the end, we in both years, we arrived at a consensus, I think, that suited all the judges. So it was equally pleasurable, I think.
I agree. Yeah. Could you tell us a little bit about what you're looking for when you're reading through the entries to the prize?
Yes, of course. I think, we're given so many poems and translations, so thousands upon thousands of poems, really, across all the categories. And so for me, it's the poems that really kind of demand a second reading are the ones that I immediately think there's something there, because it's quite easy to think, wow, it's just all, words and kind of they all start blending into each other if you don't take a pause sometimes when you're sifting through. But the poems that have these images that call you back, a lot of the open category winners and commendees are precisely those poems where I felt I had to reread the poem and the translation, obviously. And then sometimes I would just reread it for pleasure, not even because I'm judging it, but because I really enjoyed the translation. And I think that's the quality of a good translation.
Wonderful, thank you. Okay, so it's time to introduce our winners and commendees in the open category. Could you say a few words, Mary Jean, and then we'll watch the video?
Yeah, sure. So, as usual, this is always the category, I think, that has the most varied entries, and the judges take the longest to deliberate and to pick our winners. And this year we've had wonderful entries from, Sanskrit to Russian to Chinese to French and German and all these wonderful languages. In particular, for me, there were a few translations I particularly enjoyed, so I do want to name them quickly. One is our third place winner who translated this poem called Dust, and I just really loved it, even reading it the first time. Something about the way it captures these fever feelings, to quote from the poem, talking about only a wasp pounding the window, outside the pine trees rock. And it's quite a simple image, but that pounding on the window and the trees rocking, it's just that contrast between textures and feelings that really stood out for me. And I also really enjoyed our winning poem, which is the translation from a Xu Zhenmo poem from the Chinese. And that was just quite special in its ability to be quite irreverent. Some of the images aren't, exactly what you'd see in the Chinese, but I love that sort of line that says, "See you later, mate." That's certainly something that is a very English expression, but it works well in the poem. Plays on, kind of the playful tone that goes throughout the original version as well. So I really enjoyed these two, and obviously the commended poems. And also from the first time entrants, I do want to shout out to the first place or commendee, Colors, translated by Fiona Garrett from the French. I just really loved it. It could have won, for me, it could have won the open category, regardless of whether it was a first time entrant or not. Obviously, we can't pick multiple winners. So that was a really impressive poem for me as well.
Yeah, thank you, Mary Jean. I think it's worth saying that that our winner of the open category was also a first time entrant. We were spoilt for choice, really.
Definitely.
Wonderful, thank you. Okay, so we're now going to watch our video of our winning and commended translators in the open category. Thank you, Mary Jean.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Ben Ferguson and I translated a poem called Dust by the poet Nadia Küchenmeister from the German.
My name is Christopher MacDonald and I translated a poem from Mandarin.
I'm Marta Ciehanowicz. I translated a poem by the Nobel Prize-winning Polish poet Wisława Szymborska.
My name is Peter Frankopan and I have translated a poem from Russian.
My name is Oliver Fallon and I've translated this poem from Sanskrit.
I was drawn to this poem, Radość pisania, the joy of writing, at first for the sheer beauty of its imagery, a doe running through a wood, which evokes the forests of Poland. But the real genius of this poem is the sustained dual narrative of hunting and writing, Szymborska's exploration of the power of the poet to create, preserve, and destroy.
It covers 24 hours in the life of an indigenous settlement in the mountains of Taiwan. A son of the village has returned after an absence, and the community seems to be slipping away.
It's about the gods Shiva and Parvati and the birth of their son, the new god Kumara. This section is an enduring description of the goddess. If she were human, it would start from her head and work down. But because she is divine, it starts from her feet and moves up.
I chose this poem because it's about the passing of time and about trying to make sense of the world around through the noises that one hears and the sights that one sees. And whichever part of the world you've been living in 2020, I think this talks of the difficulty of trying to work out what's going on and to make sense of life.
An experience of being sort of half aware, very hyper aware of things that are going on around you while also being very still reminded me of a lot of fevers and flus that I had, particularly as a child. I think it's also wonderful the way that Nadia Küchenmeister captures that in the way the poem's written, in the syntax, in the rhythm, in the strange use of tenses, which is of course also the challenge of translating the poem.
My name is Stuart Lyons, and I translated a poem from Chinese. The poet was a student at my old college about 40 years before me, and he depicts the glorious images of a Cambridgeshire sunset as seen through a sort of Chinese lens. The name Beijing refers to his pregnant wife. Wild West Cambridge at Dusk by Su Jimo. A big red sun hangs on the western sky. Purple clouds, crimson clouds, brown clouds. Mottled fields in clusters lie. Green grass, yellow wheat, white fens. Lush, lush, dense, dense shagginess. Red petals, black stamens, long stems. Poppies in flower, in twos and threes. One large lump of translucent amber. Concave, convex cloud folds without number. South sky, north sky, hugger-mugger, hush-hush. East sky, mid-sky, totally leisurely. Universe gathering in tranquility. Sun departing in supreme glory. A gust of wind, some sounds. Bye-bye. A bold star arrogantly rides like a bumptious little boat, braving cloud billows, cloud tides, pip-pip, pitter-patter, afloat. In a blink, the dusk blaze subsides. See you later, mate. Sunset glows on the woods and the fields. Sunset glows on the plain and the beck. Sunset glows on windward and lee. Sunset glows on a country girl's brow. Sunset glows on crow's back, swallow's neck. Sunset glows on cock's cry, dog's bark. Sunset glows on the field ridge lane. On the track through the field walk folk of all kinds. White-haired old women and old men. Bent bodies, stoop, splutter, senile minds. Farmers stop work and prepare to rush home. Shoulder, hoe, hand, trug, mouth, bite, mushroom. White dress worn by a red-cheeked maid, breaking off stalks, white buds, red flowers, prettily laughing in thick green shade. Fat, smug, fluffy Beijing retires. Poppies wave in the cool outdoors. On the white poplar, a lone crow caws. The sunset has left a faint purple wake. All of the sky is a mixed star mosaic. On the road, in the field, all is still and quiet. The cottage by the elm leaks a needle of light. The wind-struck leaves rise and fall on the boughs. The distant trees cast pagoda shadows. Poppy, crow, universe, babies all. Sleep sound, breathe soft, resting well.
Well, huge congratulations to all our winners tonight. What a wonderful way to close the evening, that poem there from that translation from Stuart Lyons. We've been right around the world, but it's so lovely to end in a place that I certainly know very well, Cambridgeshire, but seen through entirely new eyes. I'm Jonathan Hayward. I'm the chair of the Stephen Spender Trust, and I want to finish this year's prize by thanking some very special people. I must first just remind you, as Charlotte has already said, that this is the last year of our Polish spotlight. Next year, we will be moving the spotlight across to Urdu, which I think is going to be very exciting. And also, just to stress, all of this evening's videos and many more full videos of all the winning and commended entries will be available on our YouTube channel after the event. So Charlotte began the evening by thanking our very generous donors who made this year's prize possible. And I really want to reiterate and echo those thanks. Without you, this prize simply would not exist, which means that, in effect, the poems we've heard tonight, those English language translations, probably would not have been written. Those poems would not exist. None of us would have had the access that we've enjoyed over the last hour into all of those other worlds that these translations open up a window into. And there would be no platform for the children and young people in particular from whom you've heard tonight. So thank you to our donors. As Max said in that lovely Polish Spotlight video, that's a lot of reasons to support the Stephen Spender Prize. But I also really want to thank our judges who have made their way through a vast number of poetic translations. I think Charlotte said there have been over 1,000 this year. And as all the judges have pointed out, there have been great things in all of the poems that we receive, all of the translations, but the judges have taken the time and the trouble and the care to discern those translations which bring something particularly new and special into the world. Those poems which I think Mary Jean Chan put very well demand a second reading. So thank you to Khairani Barokka. I'm really looking forward to reading Ultimatum Orangutan. What a wonderful title. To Mary Jean Chan, it's great to have you back this year. To Daljit Nagra, so lovely to hear you say that you were not only pleased but educated by this year's poems. And to Antonia Lloyd Jones. And as Charlotte said, this is the last year of the Polish Spotlight. So it's the last year that we'll have Antonia with us as a judge. And she has been fantastic to work with. And we're particularly grateful, Antonia, for that legacy of curated poems that, as you said, you will be leaving with the Trust and all those Polish Saturday schools. I also want to thank our patrons at the Trust and my fellow trustees who are a delight to work with, and actually all the former trustees and committee members who came before us in the history of the Trust, back to Natasha Spender herself, who got this all going over 20 years ago. We really are at this Trust standing on the shoulders of giants, and we're very conscious of that. And we only hope that we are up to the challenge. But look, an evening like this doesn't just happen. It takes months and months of planning and preparation. And for that, we owe a huge debt to Jamie Searle, our prize coordinator, to Stacey Allen, who helped to manage this year's event, to Martin Waters, the technical wizard. You won't have heard his voice, but those of us here on Zoom will have heard Martin curating and queuing and making everything possible. But particularly to Charlotte Ryland, our director, who somehow holds the Stephen Spender Trust together, what with all our work in schools and the prize and events up and down the country, and all this in the middle of a pandemic. And Charlotte has somehow turned this awful crisis that we're all suffering into an opportunity to do something new and exciting with the prize this year. And I'm really looking forward to seeing where she takes us over the years ahead. But most of all, at the end of the day, I want to thank all of you out there in the ether. I know that tonight's audience includes not only many of you who entered the prize, but also many of our prize winners, families and friends who I know provide a very strong platform, particularly for our children and young people, your teachers who make it possible for children from so many schools to enter, give you the support and encouragement that you need and deserve. But also, I think it's wonderful this year, for the first time, some of our original poets who are in the audience. And I think it is really exciting, although, you know, we're missing the warm white wine and the nibbles that we would normally be having at a physical prize giving. But this year's prize, for the first time, is not just representing language and imagery coming in from around the world, it's going out around the world, wherever YouTube takes us. So I really want to finish by asking all of us who are on Zoom, that's the winners, the commended poets, the judges and the Trust staff and trustees, I'd like to invite all of us to turn on our microphones, unmute ourselves and turn on our videos. And I think we should all say a very big thank you to everybody out there who's made this possible. And I think in the spirit of the prize, we should say that in as many languages as we can cram in to the next few seconds. So 1, 2, 3.
Dziękuję.
Dankeschön.
Dankeschön.
Merci.
Merci.
Arigato.